How you doing, man?
Good. Good.
Good.
I'm more alert at the moment.
As quick as you can.
You've got the Corona beard going there, huh?
I do.
I like it.
Yeah,
I do.
that's awesome.
I like it.
Except you're some gray.
Yes, that's called kids.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. You know, when mine starts getting long now, I mean, you can't, it's not
Oh,
as bad when it's short, but yeah, man, it's getting real white, like right down through here and across my chin.
Oh yeah,
It's, yeah.
I've got white in here, over here, gray, white. We're getting old.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
at least I still get to get old, so I'm good.
You still got what?
I still get to get old, so I'm good with that.
Yes. El
Gotcha.
Jefe. Is that your name on Zoom? El Jefe?
Probably.
It's his phone name.
Oh, well, hey, I appreciate you coming on with us for sure. And we won't keep you on forever, but we'll let you talk as long as you want to talk, basically. So did Nathan tell you what we've been doing the last few weeks as far as a message series goes?
If he did, in one ear and out the other, I have
No
short-term
problem.
memory right now is a little gone.
Gotcha. So we've been doing this series called Some Good News, and it's really been kind of a take off of John Krasinski from The Office. I don't know if you ever watched that show or not, but he's been in some other shows too. But he started this massive YouTube following. I mean, probably like 6 weeks ago. He went from no followers to 2 million overnight. Doing this like daily, or I guess he just does it once a week, like a weekly news show called Some Good News. And the whole idea is to share good news in the midst of the coronavirus epidemic. So we've been kind of playing off of that, and I've been sharing some good news every week. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been able to talk about you coming off the ventilator. We've mentioned you, we've been praying for you. And so we celebrated as a church you coming off the ventilator. And then last week, we celebrated, with the video of you actually coming out of the hospital and getting to go home. So I texted Nathan and said, hey, can you think they would want to do an interview, and can we put him on and celebrate the fact that he's at home? So that's really what this is out of. And I'm sure you've got some great things. Even in the midst of the struggle, probably some encouraging things that our church and the Big C Church can learn from, because I know that you're a man of faith. So really, I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about kind of your experience, your story, as much as you want to share, and then any kind of thought on faith, on God, on how you stayed strong through the struggle, and your family and that sort of thing. Really, anything you want to share along those lines. And Nathan, you jump in obviously whenever you want to. So and I'll kind of cut it up a little bit, edit some, and we'll share. We'll see where it goes with the with our good news stuff for the weekend. So does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay. And so before I go any further, I know Nathan and I have had this conversation, but I'll still get it wrong if I don't ask. You go by Louis, right?
Luis.
Okay. Is your name Luis?
Luis.
Okay, because the first time I called you Louis, because I thought that's what Nathan told me. And he said, no, it's Louis. And so I started calling you Louis. And then I see all the news stories, and they call you Luis. And I thought, well, who cares? I'm just going to call him Big L or something. We'll call you El Jefe.
El Jefe.
It works for me. I mean, I go by all three because everybody calls me something different. I just answer.
All right, well, I've been calling you Louis, so I'll keep saying Louis.
Works for me. I'll answer.
Gotcha. So, I mean, Nathan, why don't you, I don't know.
You want to start us off with a little prayer there?
Yeah. Nathan, tell us how you and Luis know, or Louis. I gotta stop saying Luis. Nathan, tell us how you know Louis, first of all.
Well, gosh, we go way back. Louis and Krysti both came to our church when we were in California. And we got to hang out and get to know each other at a 20-something group that we were doing. I think we called it The Edge, if I remember that correctly.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But that's how we got to know them. This was before Kelly and I were married. I don't even know, were we dating at that time? I don't think we were dating yet.
Nope, you weren't dating yet.
Yeah, no. So we got to know them. I got to help set up for their wedding and be a part of their wedding day. And then when Kelly and I got married, Louis was one of my groomsmen in our wedding party. And they've just been friends that, as horrible as Kelly and I are at keeping in touch with people that we're not around constantly, they're the type of friends we can always pick up from where we left off, even, not having seen them or talked to them in 3 years. So we've tried to get better at that since we actually live, we live a lot further away from each other than we used to in California, but we live a day's drive from each other. So we've tried over the last few years to see them once a year at least. And, but yeah.
Yeah. And Louis, you guys, were y'all at our church? Was it October, November? It hasn't been that long ago.
We were out
You
there
came
for Christmas.
Was it Christmas?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, we came out there for Christmas.
Gotcha. I knew it hadn't been
Yeah,
too
they
long.
were there for the Christmas breakfast.
To the
Breakfast
jammies.
meal.
Oh, okay.
There
Yeah.
were some good donuts that day, man.
Christy, why aren't you on screen?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, there she is. Hey. So, Louis, I guess tell us a little bit about yourself, really. About introduce yourself, your wife, your kids. Like, tell us a little bit about you, so that because the church, most of our church has never met you. They may have seen you, but they've not met you. So tell us a little bit about you.
Luis Corona. I'm 47 years old. I have 5 kids, ranging from 24 to 11.
Wow, awesome.
I'm a fireman, a coach. And
What do you coach?
husband. Soccer. Soccer.
Okay. Do all of your kids play, or some of them?
They all play.
Y'all play?
Well, all the ones that are at home still play.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
of them
Right.
are married and do their own thing.
Any grandkids yet?
Yes. My son has a stepson, Benny. And he's
Gotcha. Awesome.
6?
He's turning 7 this weekend.
7 this weekend.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And your wife? Introduce your wife to us.
Oh, that's my better half, Krysti Corona.
There she is.
She's
Hey, Miss
24
Krysti.
years old.
24.
Yeah.
Might have been when I met Nathan.
Good husband. Awesome. So you're home now, and obviously, you had the coronavirus, had COVID-19. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, the beginning of the whole experience, like what happened at home and what made you decide to go to the doctor the first time, that sort of thing, if you don't mind.
Well, it started on a Friday. I had the chills, and my wife goes, "You have a fever." I know you do. So that started the whole thing. And then that following Wednesday, she goes, "We need to go get tested. You're a first responder. Let's just go to the hospital. Let's just get checked out. You're breathing pretty fast, and your temperature hasn't gone down." I'm like, all right. So go to the hospital. They keep me overnight. They let her go, and they test me for COVID-19. I find out the next day that I'm positive for it. I do have it, but my breathing got better. So like,
It did not get any worse.
well, it got better.
No.
Oh, it didn't get any worse. So they released me from the hospital. So
They wanted to keep him, but they couldn't because he wasn't getting worse. So they kept telling me the bad news is he's not getting any better. The good news is he's not getting any worse, but that meant that they couldn't do anything. So they had
Right.
to let him go.
So I come home for
So that was
I
like a
come
Friday,
home-
Saturday.
It was Wednesday.
Kind of thing.
Wednesday.
So Thursday afternoon, right? Friday?
I don't know.
It was, let's say Friday afternoon, they sent him home.
Gotcha. So he was in the hospital from the time he was positive, or from the time you were tested? Like, was it Friday to Friday?
I was in the
first time?
hospital. I was in the hospital for 2 days being checked out for my breathing and
Gotcha.
everything.
Gotcha.
And then they told me then, hey, you're positive for COVID. And I said, all right. So, but since you haven't got any worse and not any better, we're going to go ahead and let you go home. I said, okay. So I'm home for a night. The second night, I just couldn't get comfortable. I was sleeping propped up. Krysti's worried about me. She woke me up and said, hey, you're breathing really, really fast. Patty called my wife and says, hey, how's Louis doing? And so they started talking. So I'll let her tell you that part real quick.
All right. Who's
So-
Patty? Nurse? Is that his
I'll
doctor?
explain that in just a second. So he, very stubborn man. But that's okay. That means, that's part of the reason why he's doing everything he can to get better because he's so
And
stubborn.
wait a second. Nathan, do you corroborate that he's also stubborn?
I plead the fifth.
Oh, see, I was gonna give you like two witnesses. This is like making a biblical thing. That way you could call it, you could call Louis on it next time and say, listen, Nathan agrees.
I can't throw him on the bus there,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead with your story.
That's okay. So I get him home and he's doing okay. He's trying to do things around the house and he just doesn't have enough energy and he ends up sitting back down again and then laying down and just kind of going back and forth. And I kept asking him to sit his butt down and not do anything. And he just wouldn't. So, pardon me. So that night, Saturday night, he just wasn't himself. His demeanor had changed. He was fairly short. And thankfully, we had a connection at the fire department because that's where one of the places he works. And they brought us a pulse oximeter. And I always say that word funny, but it's the little thing you put on the end of your finger and it can read how much
Pulse ox.
oxygen is in your system, in your
Right.
blood, running through your blood. So it was, 100% would be like perfect. I've not heard anybody have 100 before, but people pretty much live around 97 to 99, 95 to 99. And he was at 90 and I was getting nervous and I asked what we should be looking for, what numbers we should be looking for. And they said, well, anything 88 and below, we want to be careful of. So we just kept monitoring. He tried to lay down flat on his back to rest Saturday night, and his numbers were going back and forth between 86 and 88. And every time I saw it, I got nervous. And of course, I couldn't sleep. And I was sick at that time too, but not to the same degree he was. I had my own temperature and coughing and, all that crazy stuff. So Patty, who is Louis' ex, mother of Desiree, who's our oldest daughter, she is a nurse that works in the hospital, and she lives in Washington State. And Desiree, our daughter, had been keeping her aware of what was going on with Louis and our family. So she just, out of the kindness of her own heart, reached out and started a little text conversation. Hey, how are you? How's Louis? That kind of thing. You know, how is it looking? What is his pulse ox? You know, temperature, that kind of stuff. And so I had been keeping her aware. And so she and I stayed in contact that night about what his pulse ox readings were. And Louis said, I said, I think we're going to have to go back to the hospital. And he said, I'm not going back to the hospital. You can't make me go back to the hospital. And I said, it's funny, when he gets in that kind of a mode, I get this, I don't care what you say attitude. It just kind of flows over me. And it doesn't feel personal. It doesn't feel anything. It just feels like, I'm going to do what's right for you, medically speaking. It doesn't matter what you say. So, you know, it's not maybe the right attitude in other instances. And thankfully I don't live that way very much, but in these medical instances, I just don't have any problem doing it. It's like, I lose the sense of being worried about stepping on toes or making him angry, and it just kind of becomes something easy. So I said, if this number goes below 90, we're going to the hospital, and that's it. And he had said, just let me sleep in my own bed tonight. Sleep in my own bed. I don't want to go back to the hospital, but he kind of, I think, was just trying to get me off his back. Let me sleep. In the morning, if it's still an issue, then you can take me back to the hospital. So I messaged my mom and told her what was going on, and that he had asked to not go back to the hospital that night. And so my mom had posted, she's very big on posting to Facebook and very big on asking for prayer, which is awesome. So she puts out on Facebook, hey, this is what's going on with Louis. He's decided he doesn't want to go back to the hospital. He will reevaluate in the morning. And so my mom started getting flooded with messages from friends saying, do not let him sleep through the night. Make her take him to the hospital. And so she was getting on my case. I was feeling like I was, you know, I wrote my own little line in the sand and said, here's where we'll go. If it passes this number, this, you know, we'll go.
Right.
And so I felt a little bit better about it. So night happens, he lays down, and the numbers were really bad. And Patty said, well, tell you what, when we're having people who are struggling for, you know, to breathe, a lot of times we'll prop them up in bed. So why don't you try propping him up? He didn't like that very much, but he dealt with it. And as he sat up, then his numbers were mostly 90. Every once in a while it would hit 89. So I felt comfortable. We're right on that edge. Leave things the way they are. We'll go to the hospital in the morning. I couldn't fall asleep, and that began weeks of not going to bed until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, just because I couldn't shut my mind off. But that was the start of that. So Saturday night, he's going to sleep. He's propped up. His number oxygenation is borderline. So I kept checking. It wasn't something that we kept on his finger. He couldn't handle it. It was bothering his finger. So I put it on every once in a while, and I'd also check his temperature, and even on Tylenol, it was still high. So Patty texted and said, how are things going? And I had called the hospital once. They have a hotline, and told them what I saw, his breathing, and they were asking me questions like, well, is he breathing from his stomach? Can you see, you know, is he using his intercostal space to breathe? And I'm a lay person. I am not a medical professional. I can't tell if he's breathing from his stomach or his chest. It's just rough. So they said, okay, well, just keep us informed. Let us know if things change. So Patty messaged and asked, how are things? I told her what his numbers were. And I said, but I'm kind of concerned about his breathing. He's breathing a little more quickly than I would like. Again, what I would like is just this number. I don't know a number. I just know it looks a little odd. He's breathing faster than typical. So she says, well, do you have a watch that has a second hand? And I got my phone out, used the little thing there. And she said, count his breaths for a minute and let me know what you see. So I hung up. I counted his breaths, got to 40 breaths, 40 breaths in a minute. And I thought, yeah, that's a lot. And I looked it up online. And before I looked it up online, I just shot her the number. So it's 40 breaths a minute. And then I looked online and it said like 12 to 16 times a minute is normal, or 16 to 18 or something around that. And I thought, that's an awful lot of breaths in a minute.
Yeah.
And Patty responded, she says, I think that you need to go to the hospital. I think that he needs to be seen. I think that this could be a problem with carbon dioxide being held in his system, and you probably should go. So she was trying to be calm. I was trying to be calm. I said, okay, fine. I'll call the hotline again. I told the hotline. They seemed very, like, not a big deal, but yes, you probably should come in. So I walked back into the bedroom and said, we're going to the hospital now. I need you to get up. And he just looked at me and I said, your breathing is at 40 times a minute. It's high. We need to get you checked out. And he said, are you sure it's 40 times a minute? And I said, I am sure. You need to get out of bed and we need to go now. So we get in the van. It is 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, 1:30. We get in the van. The kids are all sleeping. They're 17, 15, and 11. So we're comfortable with them sleeping. And we figured, okay, if they don't keep them, we'll be on our way back. So this is Saturday night. I drive into the hospital. I can't go in. They won't let me go into the hospital with him. We had been sick for like the previous week. And prior to that, I had been living in Texas, where I have been working. I travel for work, and I had been at work 3 weeks out of every 4 for the last couple of months. So I had been gone for a period of time. I got home Friday. Friday night is when he had his first chill. Sunday is when I had my first coughing. So, like, we hadn't been near each other this whole time, just, we're not kissing or hugging or anything. It's just kind of, you're sick and I'm sick. And so all of a sudden it's now Saturday morning and I am now dropping him off at an emergency room where they meet us, put him in a wheelchair. He wraps his arms around his bag of stuff that he brought to the hospital. It was just a bag that was already there. And I thought, I do not remember the last time I kissed him. Funny the things that go through your mind.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even get close enough to kiss him. They were in such a hurry to get him from our car to the inside of the hospital that I think I ended up touching his hand, maybe with my hand. And I thought, I may never have an opportunity to touch him again. I mean, it's just, I knew what was going on with the hospital. I knew when we had been there the couple of days before, they barely even let me poke my head into his room as I was leaving the hospital from being in the ER myself. And I thought, I can't let it go with just touching his fingers, but like they're already backing him into the special area that they, like a side door, that they're taking people into the emergency room. And so thankfully the nurse had him turned around so that he was facing me. When she was going into the emergency room, she pulled him in. So I got to wave at him. And he waved back, and I thought, what if that was the last time I see him alive? And I went and sat in the parking lot in the emergency room, and I thought, what now? I sat, I prayed, I fell asleep. I get a call from my daughter. Hey, Mom, they're talking about intubating Dad. You might want to call him. And I had texted him before I had fallen asleep and said, hey, are you sleeping, or something like that? Just, I don't know what's going on. I'm not hearing from anybody. I don't know what to think. And I quickly called him and told him everything I could possibly think of that would be how I feel and appropriate for a last conversation. I mean, that's not something I hope anybody ever has to think about, because there's no way to know.
Wow.
There's just no way to know. And I still right now feel like it wasn't good enough. And thankfully he's alive. But I told him what a great man he is, and how much I appreciate everything he's done for our family, and how much I am blessed to have him in my life, and that God blessed us as a family by putting him as head of it, and that I loved him, and that I hoped that he would get well soon. And I had to hang up. He said, don't cry. I'm like, I'm trying. I'm really trying not to cry. And he says, it's getting hard to breathe. I need to let you go. And I thought, my kids are at home. They have no idea that we're even gone. And yet here I have had the opportunity to at least get to say goodbye, if that's something that it ends up being. So I left the hospital, drove as safely as I could home, called my pastor, called my mom, got home, woke up the kids really fast and asked them if they would like to talk to Dad for a minute. We didn't end up getting in touch with him at that point. I think he was already on the ventilator. It had happened that fast.
Wow.
But the boys, I had them leave, a verbal message through text, so he could hear, if he was still awake, he could hear their voices, and they would at least know that they'd had an opportunity to say something to him. And I will give you back to Louis.
Well, hang on. First, in all of this, you were sick. Were
Yeah.
you? Did they say that you had coronavirus, or was it?
Yeah, the
cold or-
doctor was positive. When we were in the emergency room, he was positive that Louis and I both had it, and he was also positive that our entire family would get it as well, just because.
It just, I was going to say, it just affected you completely differently than it affected him.
Absolutely.
From the severity standpoint.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Well,
Okay. So you're sick and caring for him, and obviously he's sick too. And wow.
Right. And thankfully the kids were amazing. Riley ended up getting sick. I know you wouldn't want the story as it goes. But thankfully Riley ended up getting around as sick as I did. It took me a lot longer to recover than he did, but the severity of it was about the same. One of our kids is asymptomatic. We believe that he likely was exposed but didn't have any symptoms. We're of course going to have that checked when the doctor's office is open and can do antibody checks.
Right.
And our youngest had a couple of days with a low-grade fever, but there wasn't anything beyond that.
Gotcha.
So all of this going on, I find out after the fact that, you don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know maybe we should have woken the kids up when we left for the hospital. We just, maybe, I don't know. You never know. You can't second guess,
Right.
but that's what we're left with is, did we do the right thing? So, and waking them up, did I wake? They didn't end up getting to talk to him. So what was the purpose of me waking them up, right? So I find out that later on that it affected each of them differently that morning when I woke them out of a sound sleep. Unfortunately, none of them shared any of that with me at the time, which makes me very sad. But, you know, they're going to do what they're going to do too.
They're teenagers.
Yes, humans are just
Yeah.
different. And
Right. I mean, that's a really good reminder that in any kind of a crisis, it just affects different people differently.
Right.
For
absolutely.
sure.
So like Riley didn't want to share with me that he was upset. So he laid there on the couch. He had gone to sleep on the couch because he wasn't feeling all that great. And so thankfully we live in a large enough home where everybody had kind of their own space. So yeah, we were all in it together, but we weren't on top of each other, you know, like in a New York apartment or something.
Right.
But yeah, he laid there. He said later on, he laid there and cried for half an hour, and it eats me up inside to know that I didn't know that and was feeling my own grief. I'll share that with you in a couple of minutes.
All right.
So, Louis, when she drops you off and the nurses are putting you in the wheelchair and wheeling you in, what was going through your mind at that point?
I was like, probably just going to do what they did last time. Just check me in, check me out, monitor me, and, we good. Be able to talk to her and everything. And as I'm being taken away, I'm like, you know what? I didn't give her a hug. I didn't give her a kiss. It's really bugging me. So I just kind of, all right, hey, see you later. I'm thinking it's going to be the same thing. I'm just going in, get into the room. Doctor comes in. And I mean, this is within half hour. He goes, Mr. Corona, I think we're going to have to intubate you. I think you're just getting that bad and stuff. I think it's precautionary before it gets to the point where it's an emergency. And I looked at him. I said, sure. Yeah. I mean, go for it. I mean, I want to keep being here. And my daughter called me, which I thought was my wife, because I was just in a fog. That's all I could say is I was in a fog. I told her I'm getting intubated. As soon as I hung up with them, they wheeled me back into the room. And that's the last memory I have until they were trying to wake me up. They FaceTimed Krysti, and I couldn't remember anything. Tried to wake me up Saturday. Easter's when I really was awake enough where they took everything off and I got my own room. Monday and Tuesday are a complete blur. That Wednesday of that week is where I started memorizing stuff. Remembering things that were going on with me, the date, the year, because I thought it was 2023. I was so confused. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't speak normally. And nurses would come in and say, hey, we took care of you. I said, oh, okay. And then a couple nurses came in and said, just so you know, Mr. Corona, we prayed for you. Something told us you were a godly man, that we had to pray for you to get you out of this situation. I found out later that I had a 5% chance of making it.
Wow.
And some of my records say it was grim and I wasn't looking good. And one of the nurses that took care of me said, I would come in and I saw your pee bag was good. I knew you were going to make it. Your kidneys were functioning. Your heart was strong. We knew that you were just going to pull out of it. And another nurse said, we just kept praying for you. And then
I think there's a middle school joke in there somewhere, something about you're in good hands.
yeah. But
Wow.
but on Thursday, I was having a bad day because Krysti was telling me our community was giving us money for this. There's people bringing food for the family. just overwhelmed of how much love and prayer was being handed out. People were just telling me all this. I was crying in my room. I was bawling. And I looked at Krysti, and Krysti said a quick little prayer. And this little angel walks into our room. That was my nurse that took care of me. And what is her name?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline was the nurse that took care of me. It was there when she intubated me. And she just came in, and my wife says, he needs a hug and needs his tears wiped away, because I was not moving very fast yet. Wiped away my tears, gave me a hug. It was awesome.
She had taken the time out of her day on her lunch break to leave the ICU and come up to the medical floor where he was, because she wanted to see how he was doing. And he had said to me while we were talking, because mind you, we've been just FaceTime.
Right.
And it was days for that. That just had started. And so right before Jacqueline walked in, Louis said, "There's no one here to wipe my tears." And I'm telling you, this man is not very emotional, but the things that would throw him into an emotional spin were a lot that week.
Yeah.
Just trying to get his mind back to stable, normal, however you want to say it, but things just really would affect him. And so I just cried. I was like, I'm so sorry I'm not there. And Jacqueline walks into the room, and I said, "Jacqueline, you came right at the right time. God knew that we needed you." She got to be my hands that day, and wiped his tears away and gave him a hug. And it was just overwhelming. It was just overwhelming.
Amazing. So in total, how long were you in the hospital that time until the day you actually came home? Do you remember? It was like 2 or 3
I
weeks.
was on the ventilator for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then I was there for a week and 2 days. So
3 days.
14,
So a little over 3 weeks.
22 or 23 days. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. I mean, that's,
I lost.
so Nathan would, we've been recording worship at church ahead of time, to put online on Sundays. And so Nathan and I, that's kind of the only time, we would actually talk face to face at all. And obviously he'd been sharing, your, as a prayer request for you guys with our church, with our group. But we met, a couple of times face to face like that, because we had been recording. We would be, standing in the church parking lot talking, and he'd kind of be giving me the update. And I think it was probably right before you came off the ventilator, or, like the week of maybe, that we met. And he was telling me you're still on the ventilator. And I was like, man, Nathan, like, that does not sound good, because of everything that I've read, the more days and weeks that somebody's on a ventilator, the less likely it is that they're ever going to come off.
Right.
So from like the outside looking in, I mean, we're praying for you. We're hopeful. We know that God can do miracles, but it's kind of like you said a second ago, like, you found out after the fact that there was a 5% chance that you would survive. And here you are today, wow. Right? You survived, and are on the mend. So how has the whole experience affected you? I don't mean necessarily physically or mentally or spiritually, just, any or all of those. Because I'm sure, other than being sick and now getting healthy, there have been some other effects on you, on your family, whatever. So
towards the end, where the insurance company was him and hauling, okay, you want to go to rehab, we'll check it out, and they're not going to take me, et cetera, et cetera. I had a couple moments there where I'm like, either send me there or send me home. I'd rather just be home. If I can't go anywhere else and I can't go get what I need, just send me home. I just want to go home. And that was hard because, Krysti wasn't there, so I couldn't, bounce ideas off of her, and couldn't always, people would come in and talk to me, and I would remember certain things, and later on I would be like, dude, I know we had a conversation, but I can't remember it. It was very difficult. But Christy's mom called me, and it was either Thursday or Friday. It's all a blur. But, we sat and prayed for a little bit. And she says, hey, what happens if you just get up in the morning and you just pray about people in the hospital, pray for this and that? And I said, you know what? That's a great idea. I was saying little prayers, thank you, Lord, for this, that. I said, you know what? I'll pray for the other people in the hospital. Pray for the staff. And I mean, if it wasn't for the nursing staff and the aides and stuff, some of them pushed me, which was nice, because at first I couldn't stand up. It took everything to try to stand up. I've lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
My legs look like little chicken. They're so small. Yeah, I use a walker right now to get around, but I could walk half a room now before I have trouble. But I'm grateful that I'm home where I feel the love. I could feel the energy from my kids, my wife, and everybody. I have a positive attitude. It's because I come home and I can feel the love.
Yeah.
That's basically what it boils down to. It was so good to come home, but overwhelming when I come out of the hospital and there's just a ton of people there. No one told me that they were going to do that. So I wasn't prepared mentally to see that many people. I was picturing they're going to weed me down. I'm going to see my wife, maybe the kids. I don't know if they're going to come or not. So I saw that. I was overwhelmed. It was a great thing. And then when we get home and my buddies do a drive-by with the fire trucks and people in the neighborhood, they're all waving and yelling. That was overwhelming. Just overwhelming. But the best part about being home is I'm a very stubborn man. But my wife say, hey, did you do your exercises today? Yes. And, I'm pushing myself because I don't like sitting around. I need to get up. I need to go do things.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
yeah.
So how do you feel?
How do I feel?
You feel about what is there anything this situation has done to make you different?
Life is short. Enjoy it. You
That's a good word.
know. You never know when it is. Because
Yeah.
I seriously thought I was going to the hospital. They're just going to check me out. I'll be home in a couple of days.
Gotcha.
When they woke me up, I had no clue where I was or who I was for a second. It took forever for my brain to turn itself back on because of the amount of drugs they use to keep me sedated and non-mobile and make sure I was functioning.
Right. So after this whole experience, you're home, you're with your family, you're still with us, right? What's because our series is Some Good News, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of all of this, I don't know, it's been a struggle. What's one thing that you could share with our church other than you're recovering, right? We got that. Is there another just nugget of truth buried in all of this that's good news for the world that you've learned through all of this experience?
The power of prayer is amazing when it's spread across the United States and across the world. And when you
That's
wake
awesome.
up and you could feel that people are praying for you and you knew that you would be taken care of. When my eyes opened, I knew, when my brain started turning on, I knew I was coming home. Might not be able to walk at first, but I'm coming home. I get to see my wife again. I get to kiss my wife again. I get to see my children. This is the best part about it.
So I can
Yeah.
share something with you too.
For sure.
So our oldest daughter, we have one daughter, she had a rough life, high school wise, middle school, high school. I don't know. I think a lot of it is just an underlying anxiety that none of us were aware of, and she didn't understand. I didn't understand, and so we clashed a lot. a lot of it had to do with anxiety. And through all of that, she has really struggled with her faith to the point where she says, yeah, there's a God, but the church really hurt me. And I don't have any desire to ever be in a church again or be part of a church again. And so her husband is the same. They have a similar background and they have similar feelings about that. I've had a very difficult relationship with her for many, many, many years, just because I can be my own stubborn self. And we just clashed really hard. And at the end of the day, I feel like there's some underlying anxiety that we both share. And with neither one of us really understanding it or knowing how to resolve it, life was just really hard in our house. And it's not one thing or another, or one person or another. But when she talked to him in the hospital and called me to say, you might want to talk to him because they're talking about intubating, something happened right then. And we formed a connection. She and I spoke all the time. She is a CNA, and she was working in the ICU with COVID patients at her hospital in Washington State. And now her dad is COVID positive, and now her dad is patients that she's dealing with could be her dad. She's watching people pass away. She's very stubborn herself. She likes to be in the midst of everything, and it was very, very hard for her to be so far away. This situation being as it is, with no one being able to be in the hospital, nobody spending time with someone who's ill, she and I were able to connect in a way that we never have before. And I was able to pray with her numerous times. She took over the responsibility of putting out an update every day on how Louis was doing, which took a lot of pressure off of me and gave her something to be a part of. So she was sharing updates. She was thanking people for prayers. She and I were praying. We would just call each other at weird moments. There was a lot of FaceTiming going on in the pitch black. For one of us would be in pitch black and the other would be, our time zones are different. But one thing she has said to me is she thinks she's connected more with God through this than she had felt in the past. And this is something that was an adult, I'm using the word, this is her adult experience. Grew up in two households of Christian families with strong Christian faith, and walked out of that situation, walked out of that really not feeling like she wanted to have a relationship with God. It wasn't something that was interesting to her. And through all of this, and through watching all of the prayers and thousands of people reaching out, and just the constant communication between her and I, and everyone else reaching out to her, I feel, and we've talked about this specifically over the last couple of days, that we feel like her faith is different today than it was prior to this happening. So while I might not be 100% different, while Louis might not be 100% different, we are, of course, there have been lots of changes just because of how life is today, but we're able to be in the same home. Louis is a firefighter and an EMT. He works at 3 different fire stations. He's gone all the time. I travel for work. I was traveling 3 weeks out of a month prior to this situation. The boys have been in soccer and sports and extracurriculars and school, and all of us have been able to be in our home together dealing with everything that happens as a family. We do a puzzle at the kitchen table, or we play cards together, or we sit down and we have dinner. Louis got to sit down at the kitchen dinner table with us yesterday or the day before, and we had our first time where all of us were sitting at the table, and it had been in such a long time. I just know that not even just Louis' situation and our situation and being ill and recovering, but the situation that's happening with the world right now because of this disease is making changes to the world that I feel we're going to see into our future.
Yeah.
And if nothing comes of this out of our family, if nothing else comes of this, I can't even tell you how thankful I am that Desiree's praying. She's excited. She believes that God had a whole huge hand in this. She knows the nurses that were taking care of him were faithful believers and who were praying for him. And it became less of a Bible thumping kind of situation and more of a, what is God? What does God want from us? He wants us to love each other. And what she has seen through all of this is an outpouring of love for us, that even having grown up in a Christian family and having Christian friends for 20, 30, 40 years, I can't even tell you how overwhelmed I feel on a day-to-day basis. I know this is Louis' conversation, but I want to share one other thing with you that happened through all of this with us. Saturday, it's our conversation, Louis says.
Yeah, it is.
So Louis went into the hospital Sunday morning, and time went by, and I just would feel this overwhelming fear that would not go away. And all of the things, he will never rub my back again. Just, I hate to sound negative, but these are things that like go through your head. I'm thinking, well, I know that he wants to be cremated, but where does he want his ashes to go? Oh, he really wanted us to have a tattoo together, but we never did it. So now what? Do I go get one by myself? Do I leave it alone? Do I just know that this is something it's just, I know some of these things sound kind of dumb, but they're just all of these little things that you think about after, and you think,
Sure.
I should have been better at this. I should have been better at that. Those kind of things. Was it worth it for me to be traveling so much for work? I've been working at that company for 20 years. They have taken me from San Diego to Indiana to Texas with them, and I still have a job, and that's amazing. There's so many people that are struggling with work right now, and I've been so blessed.
Insurance.
Oh, and insurance. We have insurance. Praise God. So here's what I wanted to tell you. The doctor didn't call us. I didn't talk to the doctor for an entire week. The only information I had was from the nurses. And I would call them, and I tried really hard to only interrupt them. That's how I felt, interrupting them. Twice a day, once in one shift and once in the other. And they would tell me, call me whenever you need. We've got this. You can call us. We know that, you can't come visit. So I got to talk to the nurses a lot. And one time, one of the nurses said, I just want you to know that we've got Louis. We have him, and you can rest. You can lay down. You can go to sleep. And ultimately, I knew that God had him. But it was such a huge relief off of my shoulders just for them to tell me how important it was to them that they take care of him for us. So anyway, that's what had been going on throughout the week. And like I said, not getting a lot of sleep. Our pastor who lives in our neighborhood texting me and saying, Krysti, I know we're not talking a lot, I know we can't see each other face to face, but I just want you to know when I let my dog out at 2:30 this morning and saw your light on, I sat down and prayed for you. You know, just like amazing conversations happening like that. So Saturday night, they let me use their little Vocera device. One of the nurses says, you know, I've got this thing where you can call me and it'll ring on my person and you can just speak out loud and anybody in the room can hear what you're saying. Would you like to do that? So I got to talk to Louis, even though I didn't have any idea what to say. And he wasn't awake. He was completely intubated and paralyzed and all of those things. So I got to talk to him that night. And then the next morning, the nurse called and said, hey, we've got an iPad. They just brought it to us. Would you like to FaceTime? So I got to FaceTime Louis' ear. At this point, he was upside down on a rotoprone bed where they had him sleeping upside down so that they could let his lungs oxygenate more from the back. You've, I'm sure, heard about it. Mm-hmm. And that was Sunday morning. I woke the kids up. The kids got to talk to Louis' ear. You know, they didn't know what to say, but they did their best. And so Saturday, I'm sorry, I skipped this part. So I hadn't talked to a doctor all week. Turns out they had somehow gotten the wrong telephone number. I don't even know, but whatever. It's over and done with now. So then I started talking to a doctor every day. So the last couple of days before the weekend. And at first the doctors were like, he's a very sick man. You know, we don't know how this is going to turn out, that kind of thing. Well, towards the end, like Saturday, the conversation really had turned to, this isn't looking good. And he likely isn't going to make it. And I already had been feeling that way, wondering if that was going to be the case, and like not knowing how I would survive. But then being able to talk to him, that was great. Being able to FaceTime his ear in the morning. In fact, in the back of my mind, I thought they're really doing this because they know that he's towards the end, and you know, it's going to help our family to have been able to have a little bit of closure this way when we can't be there. So Saturday, I called my oldest son, who lives in the area, but we don't connect much. He doesn't have a car, long story. But we hadn't talked a lot about the situation, not like Desiree and I had been. And I explained to him what the doctors had been telling me and that Dad likely wasn't going to be coming home. And we cried and cried and cried and somehow finished the call. That morning, the next morning we FaceTimed, right? So that was Saturday into Sunday. Sunday afternoon, my friend, very, very strong woman of faith, leads a Bible study that we attend every Sunday afternoon. She texted me and said, so have they taken Louis off the ventilator yet? And I thought, oh boy, I have done a very poor job of keeping her up to date, because we are not talking taking off the ventilator. We are talking not making it off of the ventilator. So I called her. And as soon as I told her what the doctors had been telling me, I have lived in a Christian household my entire life. My dad's a pastor. My grandparents are all faith, women and men of faith. And I tell you right now, this friend prayed over me in a way I have never been prayed over in my life. It went on and on and on and on. Hebrew words sprinkled in, just on and on and on. She didn't take a breath. She didn't think before she spoke. It just went on and on and on and on. And this fear that had been sitting on my shoulders through all of this week just went away. Like, went away. It disappeared. And it wasn't like, I know that he's going to get better. It was, he's not gone. He's still living. God has him. God knows. My mom had been telling me this all week. God knows. Nobody else. doctors can say whatever, the numbers can tell you whatever, but ultimately God knows how many days and minutes and seconds and years you're on the earth. And God hasn't said he's done with him yet. So what are you doing? That's how I felt. What are you doing? Living in fear. There's no point. So that Sunday, I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not living this way anymore. I started to feel better too. I'm sure that had a little bit to help. But this prayer, I'm telling you, just was a wash over me. And I talked to my dad later on about it. He said, Krysti, that had to have been the Holy Spirit just talking through her. I mean, that's what he does, right? We don't know all of the right words all the time. And there's no way that she just like pulled this out of her hat. It was God breathed. That's how I feel. It was definitely God breathed. And from that moment on, miraculously, he started improving. Like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they tried to take him off the ventilator. I'm like, what are you talking about? It was just one thing after another. His lungs never, or his heart never failed. His kidneys never failed. Nothing about his being, except for craziness that had to do with the COVID lung stuff, really had a huge, made a huge impact on his body. But I am 100% positive that first, us being able to talk, not first, it's not in numerical order, but being able to talk to him and him getting to hear our voices played a role. I'm completely convinced that there's a place for that. And the doctors have told us that they agree with that statement. A lot of times being able to touch your partner or, speak to them, things like that can help. But just that, we have had so many people praying, so many people praying. And this friend of ours just overwhelmed me with prayer that day. And from that moment on, there wasn't a piece of me that said, I'm afraid. And I still was struggling. It was still hard to sleep. There were still times when it was rough. But there was nothing in me anymore that said I'm going to be afraid, because God doesn't give you a spirit of fear. Right. And when you pick up that spirit of fear, you're picking up something from the devil.
Absolutely.
It wasn't helping me get better. It wasn't helping me take care of it wasn't helping Louis. It was just putting me in a position of not being effective. And I needed to not be there anymore. And we have had, and I don't feel strong in my faith. I don't feel like this strong, faithful woman of God. I am a Christian. I definitely have faith. I know that God is with me no matter what. I will share him with anyone. But I can't tell you how many statements we've gotten from people, little cards and letters that say, your faith through this has been so amazing, and it has made me feel like, I need to be stronger in my faith. And it's not anything that I'm doing or saying about myself by any stretch of the imagination, but God is most definitely using this for his good. And that's what I wanted to talk about, our friend praying for us and just not being afraid.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I really do. So in all of this, I guess, Nathan, I'm going to go back to you for a second. Let them take a breath. Although, Louis hopefully been taking a lot of breaths. But like for you, Nathan, as a friend looking in from a distance, you were seeing the daily updates, and, you were updating us every, maybe once a week kind of thing, or, every 4 or 5 days. I guess, what thoughts were going through your mind? Because this is somebody that personally, you've spent years with, they come to see you, you go to see them, somebody close. What did it mean for you and for Kelly and your family? What was going on in your minds?
Oh, Kelly wants to add something, but you want to go first? Here, Kelly's going to answer that question.
Sorry. So ever since you guys left in December, Boaz weekly, almost daily. When are the Coronos coming back? When are the Coronos coming back? Like, he talks about you guys all the time. And all I thought was, they have to come back. Like, I can't tell him that they're not coming back. And so that was just, obviously we're overjoyed in every bit of this, but that was one thing that I was like, how do I explain to him? So anyways.
Yep. Yeah. You never think about those things.
That was me.
Oh.
You never think about, like, how do you say goodbye to your husband? How do you talk about, death with your children? Until you're in the middle of a crisis like that, that's just not something that goes through our minds regularly. Thank God it's not something that goes through most people's minds regularly.
Right.
So Nathan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I had been following the news and the coronavirus and, but so Kelly's the one that's always on Facebook. I don't hardly ever get on Facebook, but when she told me that I think Krysti's mom had first posted something about Louis being tested positive or whatever in the hospital, it hit home. I'm like, okay, somebody I know now has it. And so it was kind of just a shock. Like, that was something that was happening in New York and China and, other places, not here, not to anybody I know. Right.
Right.
So at first I was like, oh, well, that's weird. But I guess my first thought was, Louis young. This only affects old people. It's not going to bother him. He'll be fine. And then, then when he went to the hospital the second time, I don't know. I mean, I guess just a lot of questioning, a lot of, I don't want to say worrying, but I guess that's part of what it was. It was, just concern for my friend. And we prayed a lot. We tried to talk, tell people that, like my parents and my sister, people that know and love Louis. The Rambos, the Rambos.
Oh, yeah. They're great.
They've become good friends with the Coronas. But we wanted to make sure everybody who knew them knew what was going on that may not be connected with Desiree or Krysti's mom, but just because we were, I guess the number one thing for me was get the word out there and get as many people praying as we could on our end.
Gotcha. Well, I think you did. I think you were definitely a good friend in that, for sure. For sure. So, listen, I thank y'all for your time. Louis, I'm going to go back to you, one last time. Is there anything else you want to say? Anything you want to share before we jump off of here? And I mean, we're going to pray for you one last time before we leave. But before we do that, do you have any final thoughts to share?
Final thoughts. Like I said before, it's just good to be home. Just the power of being home around your loved ones is amazing how fast I can recover. I have a walk that I have to use, but again, I'm trying to walk around and getting some of my strength back in my legs, and it's amazing. The boys, they're hilarious. They want to carry me up the stairs since I'm the lightest one in the house at the moment. They're both 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah. That actually reminds me, as you were coming out of the hospital, they were filming you, and on the video you can hear one of them say, how are we going to get him in the car? Like, he's a big guy. How are we going to pick him up? It's that kind of a conversation. And then you stood up and got in the car.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Did you think you were going to, when they wheeled you out, did you really think you were going to stand up and get in the car? Because I don't think anybody else did.
Yes.
Stubborn.
I am very stubborn. I got my bathroom privileges on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, where they took my alarm off my bed and off everything so I could go to the bathroom by myself.
Awesome.
So that's how I knew I was getting stronger, is when the nurses said, you're good, go ahead, go to the restroom.
Gotcha.
So When I got
Again.
to the car, I knew I could walk that many steps without falling.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I looked
Again,
at the guy,
I can't help it.
got
I think there's a middle school joke in there somewhere about you're in good hands.
Yep. But yeah, I knew I could make the car.
Awesome. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending some time with us, both of you, Louis and Krysti. And let me pray for you guys, if you don't mind. Dear Heavenly Father God, we love you. We thank you for caring for this family, for bringing peace, God, for bringing hope. God, we thank you that they have been a beacon of faith for so many, even when they don't feel that way. I'm certain there are plenty of biblical characters who never felt like beacons of faith that would be read about for decades and centuries and millennia. But God, you've given us so many examples of what it looks like to be a regular girl and still be a strong person of faith. And so, God, in those everyday circumstances, those everyday decisions where Krysti did not lose hope, and her family encouraged her, and her friends gathered around her and prayed for her, God, we thank you for those stories of faith and hope. And we thank you for Nathan and Kelly and the rest of their family and the way that they've shared this story with us as a church and allowed us to pray for them and to celebrate along with them. And God, we just pray especially right now for Louis and for Krysti and for their kids as he continues in his recovery. And God, as you just bring strength back to his body, back to his legs, we pray that he will be fully recovered sooner rather than later. And that he'll get to be the stubborn dad and husband that he likes to be, the coach, the firefighter, everything that you have planned for him, God. We can't wait to see him continue to live out his purpose in your love. Jesus, we love you. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for saving Louis. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Amen. Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you. It was
Absolutely.
also help for us to decompress and talk.
Good.
Well, good.
Good. Absolutely. All right, guys. You all have a great night.
Love
You too.
guys.
Good night.
Love you guys.
Good night. See you guys.
Good night.